Meanwhile, Michigan in action tomorrow against Rutgers. I'll be on the air with John Jansen at 12:30 on our brother station, WWJ, for the Tailgate Show. 2:30 for pregame coverage on the network, which will be heard here on 97.1 The Ticket, and then they'll kick off at 3:38 or 3:45. Depends how the noon game's going. We may get a slide from 3:38 to 3:45, depending upon that noon game. Rain is supposed to stop around between 10 and 11 a.m. So for those of you going for tailgate purposes, you should be good, although I think the golf courses are closed, which obviously house a lot of people when it comes to parking. So make alternate plans in case that is the case. I heard they were closed, but I haven't confirmed that. So I know you're a big fan of Greg Schiano and Rutgers. What do you like most about him?
I'm not a big fan of them. I can appreciate what they've done, and I think what he does is he's a great defensive mind, and they've shored up their defense. I mean, their schedule isn't anything impressive of who they played so far this year. They beat up on Syracuse, but this could be just a terrible Syracuse team. They beat Temple, and I think Delaware is the other one that they have. But they are holding teams to 11 points a game. In fact, it's the same total Michigan's given up. Their overall defense giving up less than 300 yards per game. That's impressive.
They're a balanced. They're like 33rd in the country. I think they're 33rd in the country in run defense, 34th in pass defense.
Yeah, and they've also, they scored, 61 points or something against Temple, but they didn't do it with long drives. They had short field the entire time because they were able to turn the ball over. They got them to turn the ball over 5 times.
They had 5 scoring drives of less than 30 yards in the Temple game. So 61 points. But 5 drives of scoring drives of less than 30 yards. It's defense and special teams. So Michigan and Rutgers have the unique stat in common that they are 2 of the teams in college football that haven't turned it over yet this year. The difference is Michigan's defense has created 2 turnovers. Rutgers' defense has created 8. Rutgers also has an elite guy in the return game, in Aaron Cruikshank. Now, you may remember him. He returned one for a touchdown when he was with Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. He has 5 kick and punt returns for touchdowns. If you're looking for the battle within the battle tomorrow, you're going to be watching Brad Robbins, the Michigan punter, who really didn't show anything last week because he didn't punt, but trying to punt it away from Cruikshank, a kickoff team, Jake Moody, kick it through the end zone. Anytime and if he does field it, keep him on his side of the 50. It's a win. But it's defense and special teams. Their names, I feel like their skill position guys have been there forever, although Noah Vedral hasn't been there forever. He's just been in the Big Ten forever. He started his career at Central Florida, transfers to Nebraska, played 2 years there before transferring to Rutgers. And I think this is his second season there, so it feels like Vedral's been there forever. Isaiah Pacheco, their running back, feels like he's been there forever. Bo Melton, their top wide receiver, feels like he's been there forever. And then you mix in Cruikshank, who has been in the Big Ten forever. So they've got veteran guys at the skill position spots, but it really comes down to Michigan, I think, is going. I talked to Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator, this week about giving them long fields. That's something that his defense doesn't control. The offense and the special teams control that. Give them long fields, make them go the distance, because they've benefited from great field position all season long.
Exactly, and you look at this. I think it's a great litmus test for both teams, or a good litmus test for both teams, but more so for Rutgers, is they try to gauge where their program is at. They're clearly rebuilding there with Greg Schiano, and he's a named coach that had success there prior. Decided to come back and bring him, hopefully for his sake, bring him back to glory. But I just don't see the offense from Rutgers being enough. I mean, Michigan's defense, it's not that they're that dominant, but they're good enough where they need to be, and they're great where teams want to be. You want to be great rushing the pass, and you want to be great and have somebody at safety that can, help bail you out if you're not getting the pass rush. And they're great at both ends with Hutchinson and Hill. So I think I would expect Michigan to be able to run the ball effectively. I don't know if they're going to get their 350 yards per game like they've averaged through the first 3 games this season, But they've got a stable running backs. It's pretty impressive when you look at it with Corum and Haskins and Edwards, and all three of those guys can go. So I would expect Michigan to win this game, but what Rutgers does is they play sound, fundamental football. As you mentioned, the return games can be big. They've got a couple guys that can make plays, but I just don't think Rutgers has enough. I think the spread's an interesting one, a 3-touchdown spread. I would think Rutgers keeps it a little closer than that, but maybe not much. Michigan should win this one.
Well, we'll see. They just can't play into Rutgers' strength, which is just don't continue to take care of the football.
Which is what they've done. And when you run the ball, you take care of the football.
It definitely helps, and they've run it very effectively. They haven't had to ask Cade McNamara. People are uncomfortable with Michigan's passing game, but they have 3 deep shots over the top for touchdowns in 3 games, which is a pretty good ratio. One to Ronnie Bell, J.J. McCarthy had one to Dalen Baldwin, and last week Cornelius Johnson.
But they haven't thrown it much.
They haven't thrown it much. I think he's thrown 4 or 5 deep balls. 3 have gone for touchdowns. So, I mean, look, they're still developing that wide receiver room. A.J. Henning in the punt return game, look, it's funny because, the first week they have Ronnie Bell, he gets hurt. Then they come back with Caden Colasar, who had minimal success, but had won the job in practice because he did the thing that you're supposed to do the best, which is secure the ball. You got to catch the ball. First things first. So Henning, debuts last week in the punt return game and looks great at it, and my phone starts blowing up during the game. Where has this been? Like, you got to catch the ball. Like he has been working on the primary goal is to first catch the ball.
Step 1.
Yeah, and if you're dropping it in practice, they're probably not going to throw you out there on the field at the big house.
I'm curious about this. Obviously, you're around the team, being the sideline reporter, and been there for a long time. With Schiano and Rutgers, I mean, Schiano is the guy that was offered the job and turned it down, accepted it, and then turned it down before Rich Rodriguez was hired. Does that play any role? Has that been talked about at all in Michigan circles? Do you feel like that's been talked about at all in Rutgers circles? Are they making anything out of this that seems like it should be a storyline? Not
a word. There was a little bit like last week. The Rocky Lombardi storyline was sort of a minimal. It was a minimal sidebar. But I haven't heard anything about Schiano. But I mean, you look at Schiano, you look at Mike Loxley at Maryland. You look at Mel Tucker at Michigan State. You mix in Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan. It's Big Ten East because those 3 programs that are the Rutgers, Maryland, Michigan State have bounced back pretty quickly, and only Tom Allen in Indiana has taken a step back in the Big Ten East. It's going to be interesting over the next few years. It already was tough, and it's looking to be tougher.